So this is going to be a new series of videos which are dedicated to political philosophy and philosophy in general. And these topics are really interesting to me because as a political scientist, I think having a good grasp of political philosophy is something that should be, I think, a basis for analysis and the general approach in order to interpret political and social events. So in this first video, I want to talk about bullying, and it could be bullying in very traditional sense, where you have somebody who is bullied in school, for example. I want to talk about as well, or you can apply what I'm going to tell you right now about bullying, which in my opinion occurs or can occur later in life as well. So you can have bullying style of behavior as well. For example, at work, you can have people who are bullies in life in general, so at an older age, as they say, as adults. And in my opinion, you have bullying as well in the on the arena of international politics as well. So bullying to me is a very personal issue because I've been myself bullied in school. It's a traumatic issue and it's very difficult to talk about it. But I remember very clearly to this day the first time when I experienced that. Kids at school calling you names, being disrespectful, and sometimes even physically violent towards me when I was little. And I think the first time I experienced it was probably first grade or second grade in school. So I was maybe 6 or 7 years old. And I remember to this day that I went to my parents. I was crying, I was really frustrated. And I told them that, I think a couple of kids in my class were calling me names and they were very mean to me. And what was really hurtful at the time was not so much that these kids were being mean to me, but the fact that my parents were very dismissive of what happened and tried to play it down like something normal. And they started laughing and said, it happens, or you should call them names back. So if they call you names, you should call them back. Use basically throw their own stones back at them, so to speak. But what I really found very hurtful at the time, and I remember it very clear to these days, like decades later, and I'm sure that people that have this sort of experience will most likely will remember these traumatic experiences for a very long time. They said that probably I've done something to provoke it. That probably I was teasing myself, these kids, some way, so they were mean to me. And that I really, really, really found that quite hurtful. And it was even more painful than the fact that, some kids were saying mean stuff to me and being hurtful. And so I don't want to present my parents here in a bad light, because I think they're great parents, but they didn't know any better at the time, because it's an issue that, at the time, I guess nobody really paid attention to it. It was in the 1980s, mid 1980s, so back at the time, right? I know for many of you guys it seems like ancient history. So there was no internet, there was no, YouTube, obviously. Computers are, very rudimentary. They're just a bit, I guess, look more or less like like a calculator. If you take a peek at the Bible, the Old Testament, for example, and the story of Cain and Abel, it was not that Abel was trying to provoke Cain, right? It was not that his brother was trying to be mean uh, to Cain, and then Cain took out the knife and killed his brother. It was because Cain was insecure. If we use anachronistic terms, he was envious of his brother. He was jealous, so he took the knife and killed his brother because he thought, well, my brother is a better farmer than me, and our father loves him more than me. So this is really telling you a lot about human nature. And I'm not saying that you should be religious. I'm not saying you should be a Christian. But I happen to, if you want, you can look at Bible simply as a historical document or as an observation on human nature. And it happens in this particular case to completely correspond to my understanding, and it is that human nature is naturally very weak, that we can be prone to all sorts of violence, negative emotions. And I think psychology in the last maybe 3 decades have discarded the idea that we're rational beings that sometimes are emotional. And now I think it's more correct to think about people as beings which are emotional beings, which are prisoners to their own passions and sometimes very aggressive, violent instincts, who like to present their ideas and their arguments, their points of view as something very rational. So we take our emotions and very often we pack them in these rational shells, present them as very logical ideas, but a lot of times, not always, but many times, we proceed from emotion. And this is especially true in interpersonal relationships, in my opinion, where it can happen as well at workplace, where you have somebody that some people that want to fire a particular individual or they want to hire a particular individual. But oftentimes the relationship or your career, if you want, is going to be dependent not so much on the quality of work that you're going to do for this particular company that you're working at, but it is going to be really dependent on the way other people view their emotions, their feelings towards you, basically how you fit in this particular group of individuals there. And of course, managers are very important, but the whole team, the way they view is very important. So back to bullying and why bullying is so important. In my opinion, bullying presents you very early, if you happen to be so unfortunate to become a victim of bullying, presents you very early with two very important challenges, at least two, in my opinion. And the first challenge is that it teaches you a lesson about human nature. And you either are able to learn this lesson or you're oblivious to it. So, and in my opinion, the lesson is that people can be very mean to you and very violent to you, very aggressive towards you for no particular reason. They simply don't like you, and it's a fact of life. And it's a very, very hard pill, I would say, to swallow for a lot of people, even when they're adults. The second challenge that you're presented with bullying in particular, whether it's in school or later in life, is how to respond to that. So I try to make a difference between reacting to something, which is basically becoming a prisoner or a slave of my emotions, or responding, that is, first try to approach the situation in a calm manner as much as possible, and then from there to respond to the behavior or the words or the attitude of other individual or individuals. So how do you respond to bullying? Well, this is one of the most difficult tests that are going to determine who you are as a person very early on in life. So there are at least two ways you can respond to it. The first way is to take the aggression from this person or people or kids, if you're very at a very tender age at the time. If you're a little kid and you're bullied by kids that are maybe a couple of years older than you, or maybe the same age as you, but they're bigger and appear stronger and more intimidating. So the first thing you can do, unfortunately, a lot of people do this, is you become mean yourself, you become aggressive yourself, and you learn this lesson, so to speak, which I think is not a good lesson at all, that if people are mean to you, it's okay to be mean to other people, and life is all about that. It's either me or them, right? It's a survival. Or it could be a cruel competition. And later in life, you can mask this sort of behavior. I guess if you take a popular reference from Star Wars, this is, I think, the temptation of the dark side, right? It's easier to be mean when you're presented with mean behavior, in my opinion. This is the easier path, and the temptation is really there. And a lot of people cannot resist this temptation, and they become bullies themselves. They can become mean individuals themselves. They can also, another response is to target the aggression that you're presented with, or that you've been poisoned with, to target this aggression towards your own self. And the other approach, which I would suggest, whether obviously if you're little, you're probably not watching this video, but if you've been struggling with being bullied in your life, or you're being bullied at work, or you're being bullied by somebody that you know, doesn't matter where it is, I hope that it's going to help you. So in my opinion, the proper reaction is don't take this aggression. Right? Try to stay objective. Don't become an aggressive and a mean person. The fact that somebody is being aggressive towards you, they're being mean towards you, is nothing more than a reflection of the way they feel about themselves. So just because somebody feels like a pile of crap, basically, doesn't mean that you should feel like that about yourself, and that you must become somebody who is going to infect with this sort of behavior. Because in my opinion, evil can be infectious, and it is infectious. It can be very infectious. But good behavior can also be, and good individuals, although they're, unfortunately, in my opinion, a bit more rare these days, or maybe not these days, maybe they've always been a bit rare. So good can also be infectious, but just because somebody is being mean and nasty towards you doesn't mean it should be like that yourself. So this is, I think, the second huge challenge that bullies poses very early in life. You should stand up for yourself. But somebody hits you and you're a little, should you hit them back? It's a very, very big question, because if you don't hit them back, what's going to happen? They'll see you as a doormat. What I learned very early on is that I should stand up for myself. So when these kids were abusing, trying to be abusive towards me, they hit me, the bullying stopped the moment that I hit them back. Now I know this is very controversial. Isn't it in a disagreement with what I just said? No, because I didn't become a bully myself. I was simply responding to people that were already trying to be mean towards me. But how do you respond to bullying later in life? If this happens at work and some of your colleagues are mean to you, you should talk to your boss about it. You should talk to the managers about Well, it's easier said than done because just like the situation that I described with my parents, your manager may say, or HR, human resources may say, the representative there may say, ah, you're making this shit up, or oh, you're too sensitive, right? So if you're met with that sort of behavior or that sort of attitude, guess what? You're presented with only one option, and it is, well, the alternative either stay there and suck it up, or leave the company altogether. So, in my humble opinion, you should never tolerate abuse, and if these individuals are, or certain individual or individuals are mean to you, should be prepared to leave as soon as possible. Now, what bullying teaches us about human nature is that, like I said at the beginning of this video, people can be extremely mean and aggressive for no particular reason. And this really applies to politics as well. This is a huge lesson about politics, about the way political struggle operates, about why a lot of times in human history certain people were persecuted and exterminated simply because they were of different color, different religion, different race, or they had basically different views. How you respond to bullying from a very early age can have a very, very strong impact on who you are as an individual. You can have bullying on international stage as well between states. You can have states which act like bullies is cool. So big states which try to bully smaller ones, or states which have more weapons that try to bully smaller ones. Like in the situation in Ukraine, for example, where you have Russia, which started the invasion, a war against Ukraine, simply because Ukrainians wanted to join the European Union, more or less. And they were thinking, or majority of them was thinking about joining the European Union, and of course the NATO perspective. I know the situation is a bit more complex than that, and there are nuances. So to sum up what I try to present to you in this video, first, if somebody's being mean to you, you should stand up for yourself, but don't become mean and evil yourself. Don't start abusing other people. Try to measure your reaction, not but your response to it. So don't react, try to respond. And respond in a measured way. Don't respond to evil by becoming evil. Thank you for watching.